The wet fabric hit my face with a slap that stung my eyes and left soapy water running down my chin. I stood frozen for one heartbeat, then two, my hands still dripping dishwater onto the kitchen tiles. Jesse's voice was already cutting through the room again, RP and dismissive. I said wash my clothes and seek a meal. What RT of that is RD to understand? She stood by the coffee table with her arms crossed, a heap of dirty laundry at her feet. Jeans, a green sweater, a couple of t-shirts. All tangled together like she had SCP'd them off her bedroom floor, the bedroom that was actually our living room couch, and thrown them in my direction. Her face was flushed, her eyes bright and unapologetic. Behind her, Mark shot up from his armchair so fast that his newspaper slid to the floor. I wiped the soap from my cheek with the back of my hand. The dish towel hung over my shoulder, and I grabbed it to dry my face. My hand shook. You threw dirty clothes at me. Jessie rolled her eyes. I tossed them. There's a difference. You're being dramatic. Mark stepped between us, his palms out like he was calming two wild animals. Okay. Let's all take a breath. I pushed past him and picked up the green sweater from the floor. It was wet, heavy with whatever she had spilled on it earlier. I held it up between us. This is what you threw at my face. This is your dirty laundry, Jessie. You want it washed. You can use the washing machine yourself. You're 19, not 9. She scoffed and flopped onto the couch, pulling her knees up under her chin. I don't know how to use it. Dad always did the laundry at home. And you're the one who's always home, so it's not a big deal. Mark looked at me, and I saw the familiar are softening in his eyes. Linda, she's just getting settled. Give her some time. She's been here 5 months, Mark. 5 months of free rent, free food, and free electricity. And this is how she says thank you. Jessie reached for her phone on the cushion next to her, scrolling through it like we weren't even there. I didn't ask to come here. My dad sent me. If you have a problem with it, take it up with him. I dropped the sweater on the kitchen table and turned back to the stove. The water in the pot was rooting to boil, and I needed something to do with my hands. I grabbed a knife and root chopping an onion. The RP smell burned my eyes, and I blinked. Mark followed me into the kitchen, keeping his voice low. She's my niece. My brother's daughter. I can't just kick her out. I kept chopping. I'm not asking you to kick her out. I'm asking you to back me up when she treats me like a maid. He leaned against the counter, rubbing the back of his neck. I know. But you have to understand, she's been through a lot. Her mother leaving, Frank not handling it well. She needs stability. The knife hit the cutting boa harder than I meant it to. And what about me? Mark, what about my stability? I work from home. I CK, I clean, and I listen to her music thumping through the walls at 2 in the morning. And now she's throwing clothes at my face. Jessie's voice drifted over from the living room. I can hear you, you know. I turned around. Good. You're supposed to. Mark walked back to the couch and sat down across from her. He spoke like a patient teacher explaining the rules to a child. Jessie, you need to apologize to Linda. She's right. You can't throw things at people. She looked up from her phone, her expression shifting from bored to wounded. I wasn't throwing. I was just trying to give her the laundry. I was in a hurry. There's a concert tonight, and I needed everything washed before I left. Mark nodded slowly. Okay, but next time, put the laundry in the basket. That's all. Just put it in the basket. I read at the back of his head. He had just turned her offense into a minor misunderstanding. I was the one left standing there, onion juice on my fingers, holding a knife and fighting the urge to throw it across the room. Jessie smiled, a small victorious twitch at the corner of her mouth. Fine. I'll use the basket. Happy now, Mark stood and walked back to me, putting a hand on my shoulder. See? It's settled. I moved away from his touch and filled the pot with pasta. Dinner in 20 minutes. She pushed herself off the couch and read into the bathroom. The door clicked shut and I heard the shower start. She had a concert to get to after all. Never mind that she hadn't lifted a finger to help with dinner. I stirred the pasta and watched the bubbles rise. Mark sat at the table, staring at the newspaper he hadn't picked up. You okay? He asked. No, I said. But I will be. He opened his mouth to say something else, then closed it. He didn't know how to fix this. He never did. He thought patience would smooth over everything, that if he just waited long enough, I would stop being angry. But the anger wasn't going anywhere. It was settling into my bones like cold water. The bathroom door opened, and Jessie came out in a cloud of steam, wrapped in Mark's bathrobe. She didn't ask if she could use it. She never asked. She walked past us into the living room, dropped her towel on the floor, and root rummaging through her duffel bag for something to wear. I watched her pick up a blouse, hold it against herself, then toss it aside. She did this 3 times, leaving each rejected shirt on the floor. Those go in the basket now, Jessie, I said from the stove. She glanced over her shoulder at me, then bent down and scp'd them up in one arm. She dropped them on top of the pile she had thrown wire. There. Basket. Mark didn't look up from his paper. He didn't say a word. I set the table for 2, then realized I needed a 3rd plate. I got one from the cabinet and placed it across from me. Jessie finally picked an outfit, a black dress with silver threads, and headed back to the bathroom to change. The pasta was ready. I drained it and added the sauce. Mark poured himself a glass of water and sat down. Jessie joined us a few minutes later, still combing her damp hair. She took her seat without a word, pulled her phone out, and root typing. We ate in silence. Or rather, Mark and I ate while Jessie scrolled through her screen, occasionally stabbing a fork into her plate without looking up. Clea read my throat. How was your day? She shrugged. Fine. Went to the mall. Did you find anything? Found a pair of boots. But I didn't have enough money. Mark reached for his wallet without hesitation. How much do you need? I put my hand over his wrist. She can EARN it. She's not a child. Jessie's eyes flicked from Mark to me, her lip curling. It's fine. I don't want his money anyway. Mark pulled his hand back slowly. He didn't argue, but I could feel the tension radiating off him. He was used to being the hero, the one who fixed everything with a $20 bill. I had just taken that away from him. Jessie pushed her plate 4-way RD, half-eaten. I'm going out. Don't wait up. She grabbed her purse and walked to the door, stopping just before she opened it. Thanks for dinner, Linda. It was okay. The door clicked behind her. I picked up her plate and scraped the cold pasta into the trash. Mark didn't say anything. He just sat there, ring at the closed door, looking like a man who had just realized he was losing something he couldn't name. I filled the sink with hot water and root washing the dishes. The detergent foamed up around my wrists, and I remembered the wet shirt hitting my face, the sting in my eyes, the way Mark had jumped to his feet, but not to my defense. I scrubbed the pot harder than necessary, scraping off a layer of burnt sauce. Linda, Mark finally said. I didn't turn around. He walked over and stood behind me, close enough that I could feel his breath on my neck. I'm sorry, he said. I should have handled it better. I dried my hands and turned to face him. You should have. But you didn't. He nodded, his eyes downcast. I will next time. I looked past him at the empty living room, the couch with its rumpled blankets, the pile of laundry she had left on the floor by the basket instead of inside it. Next time would come. It always did. And I would have to decide whether I was willing to keep apologizing for a girl who didn't know how to say sorry. 3 days passed in a strange, quiet rhythm. Jessie came and went as she pleased, her footsteps soft on the hardwood floor, her music still thumping through the walls when I tried to read. The pile of laundry by the basket grew into a small mountain, and I left it there as a silent protest. Mark noticed, but he didn't mention it. He had been walking on eggshells since the dinner incident, offering to make coffee in the morning and asking if I needed help with groceries. I accepted his kindness, but I didn't let it erase what I had seen in his eyes that night, the hesitation, the doubt, the instinct to protect his niece over his wife. Thursday morning arrived with a gray sky and the smell of rain. I was sorting through the mail at the kitchen counter when I noticed a gold key on the ledge by the fruit bowl. It was new small, with a shiny rabbit Chores attached to the ring. I had never seen it before. I held it up, turning it over in my palm, and called out to the living room. Jessie emerged from the bathroom, her hair wrapped in a towel, wearing one of my old sweatshirts without asking. What's this? I held the key out. She glanced at it and shrugged. Oh, that's for Chloe. She's coming over later to use the Wi-Fi. Her place got cut off. I set the key on the counter. You can't give out keys to our apartment without asking. Jessie picked up a hairbrush from the coffee table and ran it through her wet tangles. It's no big deal. She's my best friend. She's not a stranger. The towel on her head was rooting to drip onto the cushions. I grabbed a dry one from the hall closet and handed it to her. Use this. And about the key, I heard you. She took the towel and replaced the wet one, not looking at me. I'll get it back from her tonight. Happy. I didn't answer. She was already turning away, heading back to the bathroom, the towel leaving a trail of damp spots on the floor. That afternoon, Chloe arrived with a duffel bag slung over her shoulder and a wide, friendly smile. She was younger than Jessie, maybe 17 or 18, with braided hair and a nose ring. She nodded at everything I said, offered to help with the dishes, and complimented the smell of the rice I was making for dinner. I liked her immediately, which made me uneasy. Jessie had a talent for surrounding herself with people who made her look better. Chloe settled onto the couch with her laptop and root typing, occasionally asking Jessie for the Wi-Fi password or a glass of water. Jessie played hostess with a lazy handing over a soda and pointing out the best outlets to plug in. I watched from the kitchen as Chloe's eyes roamed the room, pausing on the TV, the laptop I had left open on the desk, the small jewelry box on the mantel. She was curious, not predatory, but I still felt a prickle of unease. Chloe will be staying for dinner, Jessie announced, not asking. She's got nowhere else to go tonight. I said, of course. There's plenty of rice. Mark came home at 6 and he greeted Chloe with the same open smile he reserved for all of Jessie's friends. He asked her about school, about her job, about her family. She answered in soft, polite sentences, her eyes never quite meeting his. Over dinner, she talked about wanting to go to community college, about saving up for a used car. Jessie interrupted her every few minutes, correcting her or adding details that made Chloe's story sound smaller. Chloe didn't fight it. She just nodded and ate her rice, her shoulders hunched slightly. After dinner, Mark offered to drive Chloe home, but she shook her head. I can take the bus. It's not far. Jessie walked her to the door, and I saw them exchange a quick, secretive look before Chloe read into the stairwell. Jessie closed the door and leaned against it, smiling at me like we read a joke. She's nice, right? Very nice, I said. But she's not staying the night. Jessie frowned. She wasn't going to. I pointed at the duffel bag Chloe had left by the couch. Then why did she bring that? Jessie's eyes flickered, just for a second. She forgot it. I'll give it back tomorrow. Mark was loading the dishwasher, his back to us. He didn't hear the exchange, or if he did, he chose not to interrupt. I walked over to the duffel bag and hefted it. It was light, nearly empty, like it had been packed for show. Mark straightened up and wiped his hands on a towel. Everything all right, everything's fine, Jessie said, her voice bright. I'm going to take a shower. She grabbed the duffel and carried it to the living room closet, shoving it behind a stack of blankets. That night, I lay awake listening to Jessie move around the apartment. She was quiet, but I could hear the soft creak of the floorboards, the click of the bathroom door, the faint hum of her phone charging. I didn't fall asleep until after 2. The next morning, I found the gold key back on the counter, right where I had left it. Jessie was making toast in the kitchen, humming a pop song under her breath. Chloe brought it back, she said before I could ask. She said thanks for the Wi-Fi. I picked up the key and put it in the drawer with the sparry change. Good. That's done. The day passed without incident. I worked on my laptop, answered a few emails, and made a quick trip to the grocery store. When I came back, Jessie was on the phone, her voice low and urgent. She hung up the second she saw me, her face shifting from worried to blank. Everything okay? I set the grocery bags on the counter. Fine. Just Chloe. She's having boy trouble. Jessie grabbed an apple from the bag and bit into it. I told her to call her mom, but she won't. I unpacked the groceries, listening to the crunch of the apple. She's young. She'll figure it out. Jessie nodded, tossing the core in the sink. Yeah, she will. Mark came home early that evening, and we sat down to dinner without any arguments. Jessie was quiet, almost subdued, picking at her chicken and sta ring at the wall. Mark asked about her day, and she gave one-word answers. He didn't push. After dinner, I went to put away a stack of clean towels in the hall closet. The duffel bag was still there, shoved behind the blankets. I pulled it out and unzipped it. Inside were 2 t-shirts, a pair of jeans, and a small makeup bag. I opened the makeup bag. Inside was a bottle of nail polish, a lip gloss, and a tightly folded piece of paper. I unfolded it. It was a note in loopy handwriting. This is the address. I'll meet you there at 9. Don't forget the key. I didn't recognize the address. I didn't recognize the handwriting. But I knew it wasn't Chloe's, because Chloe had thanked me for the Wi-Fi in a text message earlier, and her letters had been round and ca refull. This was Shah RP Ungalayar, like someone in a hurry. I refolded the note and put it back in the bag. I zipped the bag up and shoved it behind the blankets. The next day, Chloe called me on my personal cell. I hadn't given her the number. She whispered, "Linda, you need to listen to me." The phone call with Chloe ended as quickly as it had sta root. She whispered something about Jessie planning to take a ring from my dresser, then hung up before I could ask any questions. I stood in the kitchen, the phone still pressed to my ear, the dial tone humming in the silence. Jessie was in the bathroom, running the shower, singing along to some song I didn't recognize. Mark was at work. I was alone with the news I had just received, and I didn't know what to do with it. I walked to my bedroom and opened the dresser drawer where I kept my mother's wedding band. The blue velvet box sat in the corner, tucked under a stack of sweaters. I lifted the lid. The ring was gone. I pushed aside the sweaters, checking underneath them, then checked the next drawer and the one after that. Nothing. My hands sta root to shake, and I closed the drawer slowly, trying to remember the last time I had seen it. It had been there on Sunday when I wore it to church. I had taken it off before bed and placed it back in the box. I was certain of that. The shower stopped. Jessie emerged in a cloud of steam, her hair dripping, wrapped in Mark's robe again. She stopped when she saw me standing in the hallway. "What's wrong? Where is my mother's ring?" Jessie blinked, her expression ca refully blank. "I don't know. Did you lose it?" I stepped closer. "It was in my dresser drawer. Now it's gone. You're the only person who's been in that room while I wasn't here." Jessie pulled the robe tighter around herself. "I don't go in your room. I don't touch your things. You took cash from my Tupperware. You took my grandmother's brooch and gave it to Chloe. Don't tell me you don't touch my things." Her face went white, then red. "I didn't take that ring. If it's missing, maybe you misplaced it. You're always moving things around." I knew I hadn't moved it. I had been ca refull with that ring for 5 years, ever since my mother handed it to me during her last visit. It was the only piece of her I had left. I walked back to the bedroom and opened the drawer again, more frantic this time, pulling out every sweater and folding them in piles on the bed. No ring. I checked the nightstand, the jewelry box on the mantel, even the pockets of my winter coat hanging in the closet. Nothing. Mark came home at 6 and I met him at the door. "My mother's ring is gone." He set down his briefcase and looked at me. "What do you mean, gone?" "Missing. Not in the drawer where I left it." I led him to the bedroom and showed him the empty velvet box. He sta read at it, then at me. "Did you check everywhere?" "Everywhere. The only person who's been in this room is Jessie." Mark rubbed his forehead. "You can't just accuse her without proof. Maybe you put it somewhere else and forgot." I grabbed his arm. "I didn't forget, Mark. I remember putting it in that box on Sunday night. She was in the apartment all day on Monday while I was at the grocery store. Tuesday too. I was out for hours. She had plenty of time." He pulled away from me, his face tight. "Let me talk to her." Jessie was on the couch, scrolling through her phone. She looked up when Mark approached, all innocent eyes and tilted head. "Hey, Uncle Mark. What's up?" He sat down across from her, keeping his voice calm. "Linda says her mother's ring is missing. Have you seen it?" Jessie shook her head slowly. "No. I told her I didn't take it. I don't even know what it looks like." "It's a gold band with a small diamond," I said from the doorway. "You would have seen it in the box when you went through my drawers." Jessie's jaw tightened. "I didn't go through your drawers." "Why would I?" Mark held up a hand. "Let's not fight. We need to figure out where it is." He turned to Jessie. "If you know anything, now is the time to tell us." Jessie stood up, her phone clutched to her chest. "I don't know anything. I'm tired of being blamed for everything that goes wrong around here. Maybe Linda lost it and doesn't want to admit it." She walked past me and headed for the bathroom, slamming the door behind her. Mark followed me into the kitchen. "We need to calm down. If she took it, we'll find it." "Where are we going to find it?" Mark, "She could have sold it already. She could have given it to Chloe." "I don't know." I leaned against the counter, my arms crossed, my heart pounding. The next morning, I went through Jessie's backpack while she was in the shower. I didn't want to do it, but I had to know. Inside were her phone, a lipstick, a crumpled receipt from a fast food place, and a small blue velvet box. My box. I opened it. The ring was inside. I carried the box to the kitchen and set it on the table. Mark came in with his coffee and saw it. He read at the box, then at me. "Where did you find that?" "In her backpack. She had it this whole time." Mark set his coffee down and sat heavily. "I can't believe she would do this. She knows what that ring means to you." I opened the box and took out the ring, sliding it onto my finger. It felt heavier than before, weighted with the betrayal of a girl who had smiled at me over dinner and called my king. "Okay." I said, "She lied to us." She looked me in the eye and told me she didn't know what the ring looked like. And she had it in her bag. Jessie came out of the bathroom, still drying her hair. She saw the box on the table and froze. Her face went pale, then pink. "Where did you get that?" I held up my hand with the ring. "In your backpack. Don't lie to me again." She opened her mouth, then closed it. Her eyes still root from me to Mark, looking for an ally. Mark didn't say anything. He just looked at her, his face tired and sad. Jessie finally spoke, her voice small. "I was going to give it back. I just wanted to see if it was real gold. I was curious." I said, "You stole from me. You took the only thing my mother left me, and you put it in your backpack like it was nothing." Mark stood up. "Jessie, I think you need to go." She read at him. "What? I think you need to leave. Find somewhere else to stay. This isn't working." Jessie's eyes filled with tears, real ones this time. "Where am I supposed to go? My dad won't take me back. I don't have anywhere else." Mark didn't soften. "You should have thought about that before you stole from us." She grabbed her backpack and ran to the door, but I stopped her. "Wait. I want the receipt. The one from the jewelry store." She blinked. "What jewelry store?" "The one you went to last week." "I found the receipt in your bag. $300. That was my cash from the Tupperware." She didn't deny it. She just stood there, gripping the door handle, her face wet with tears. I was going to pay it back. "I had a plan." I said, "I don't want your plans. I want you to leave." She left. The door clicked shut and Mark and I stood in the kitchen, the silence stretching between us. He reached out and touched my hand, the one with the ring. "I'm sorry," he said. "I should have listened to you." I said, "You should have. But you didn't." I pulled my hand away and went to the bedroom, closing the door behind me. I sat on the edge of the bed and looked at the ring on my finger, turning it over and over. It was back where it belonged, but something in me had shifted. The trust one had given Jessie was gone, and I didn't know if I could get it back. The appointment felt hollow after Jessie left. The silence was heavier than the noise had ever been, settling into corners and clinging to the furniture. I kept expecting to hear her music thumping through the walls, her footsteps padding across the floor, her voice calling out for something she needed. But nothing came. Mark, and I moved around each other refully, like two people sharing a space that had suddenly become unfamiliar. The morning after she left, I went down to the basement to do laundry. The machine was old and loud, and I had to jiggle the handle to get it sta route. While I waited for the cycle to finish, I noticed a boa road box tucked behind the boiler. It was dusty, half hidden by a pile of old rags. Frank's handwriting was on the side in black marker, Jesse's things. I pulled the box out and opened it. Inside were school yearbooks, a couple of plastic trophies from a soccer league, and a stack of envelopes held together with a rubber band. The top envelope was addressed to Mark, postmarked 2 years ago. I recognized Frank's messy scrawl. I didn't want to read it, but my fingers were already sliding the letter out. Mark, I can't keep her anymore. She took money from my wallet 3 times this month. I confronted her, and she denied it, but I know it was her. She's getting worse. I need you to take her for a while. Just for a while. I'll send money when I can. Please. I'm at the end of my rope. I read it twice, then set it aside and pulled out the next letter. It was dated a month later, the same desperate tone, the same plea. The third letter was shorter, almost resigned. She's not responding to anything I try. She needs a fresh start. Maybe with you and Linda, she'll get back on track. I sat on the concrete floor and read every single letter. There were 7 of them, each one detailing another incident, another stolen bill, another lie. Frank had been asking Mark for help for 2 years, and Mark had never mentioned a word of it. He had brought Jesse into our home without telling me the full story. I ride the box upstairs and set it on the dining table. Mark was in the kitchen, making coffee. He turned when he heard the thud of the box. What's that? I pulled out the first letter and handed it to him. Read this. He took it, his brow furrowed. As he read, his face went through a series of changes, confusion, recognition, then a slow dawning shame. He set the letter down. Linda, I can explain. You can explain why you didn't tell me she had a history of stealing. You let me leave my jewelry out, my cash in the Tupperware. You let me trust her. Mark rubbed his face. I thought it was just Frank being dramatic. He always made things sound worse than they were. I didn't think she would do the same thing here. She did the same thing here, Mark. She took my mother's ring. She took cash. She had a spa key made. And you didn't think to and me. He reached for my ARM, but I pulled away. I made a mistake, he said. I thought I could help her. I thought if she had a stable home, she would change. People don't change just because you want them to. You have to give them a reason. And you never gave her a reason to change. You gave her everything she wanted without asking for anything in return. He sat down heavily, his hands flat on the table. I know I messed up. But what was I supposed to do? She's family. Family doesn't steal from family, I said. Family doesn't lie to family. Frank told you the truth, and you ignored it. That's not helping. That's avoiding. The front door opened, and Jessie walked in. She stopped when she saw us, her eyes still rooting for me to Mark to the box of letters on the table. She had been gone for 2 days, staying with Chloe, and she looked tired, her clothes rumpled, her hair unwashed. What are you doing with my stuff? She asked, her voice shot RP. I pointed at the letters. These aren't your stuff. These are your father's letters to Mark. He told him about you, Jessie. He told him everything. And Mark never told me. Jessie's face went pale. Those are private. You had no right to read them. You had no right to steal from us, I said. So I guess we're even. Mark stood up. Jessie, I'm going to ask you one more time. Is there anything else you've taken from us that we haven't found? She crossed her arms, her chin jutting out. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't lie to me, Mark said, his voice louder than I had ever heard it. I've read your father's letters. I know what you did at his house. I know you took money, jewelry, and then denied it. I gave you a chance, Jessie. I gave you a home. And you threw it back in my face. Jessie's eyes glistened, but she didn't cry. She looked at me, then back at Mark. You want to know the truth? Fine. I took the ring. I took the cash. I took the key. I was going to sell everything and leave. I had a plan. Chloe was going to help me get a bus ticket out of state. But I changed my mind, okay? I didn't sell the ring. I kept it. I brought it back. That has to count for something. I said, it counts for nothing. You only brought it back because you got caught. Mark walked to the door and opened it. You need to leave, Jessie. For good this time. I don't want to see you here again. She stood frozen for a moment, then grabbed her duffel bag from the corner. She walked past us, her shoulders squa red, her head held high. At the door, she paused and looked back. You're both hypocrites. You pretend to be good people, but you couldn't wait to get rid of me. You were looking for an excuse the whole time. She walked out, and Mark closed the door behind her. He leaned against it, his eyes closed. I'm sorry, he said. I should have told you everything from the beginning. I sat down at the table and picked up the stack of letters. You should have. But you didn't. And now we have to deal with the mess. He walked over and sat across from me. What do we do now? We clean up, I said. We pay the bills Frank left behind. We change the locks. We move on. He nodded slowly. I love you, Linda. I know I haven't shown it lately, but I do. I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw the exhaustion in his face, the regret in his eyes. I know you do, I said. But love isn't enough if we're not honest with each other. He reached across the table and took my hand. I'll do better. I promise. I squeezed his hand, but I didn't promise anything back. Promises had become fragile things in our home, and I wasn't ready to make new ones yet. The phone rang late Sunday night, a shrill sound that cut through the quiet of the apartment. I was in the bedroom, folding laundry, and Mark was already asleep. I picked up the receiver, expecting a wrong number or a telemarketer. Instead, I heard Chloe's voice, low and hurried, like she was afraid of being overheard. Linda, you need to listen to me. Jessie is planning to take a ring from your dresser and sell it. She showed it to me last week. She said it was old and nobody would miss it. My hand tightened on the phone. What ring? I don't know. A gold one with a small diamond. She kept it in a blue velvet box under your sweaters. My mother's ring. The one I had found in Jessie's backpack just days ago. The one I had put back in the drawer after I thought the whole mess was over. I asked Chloe, where is she now? She's at her dad's place. She went back there yesterday. But she told me she's coming back to get the ring. She said you'd never notice it was gone because you don't wear it every day. I felt the blood drain from my face. How do I know you're telling the truth? Because I'm not like her, Chloe said, her voice cracking. She used me, Linda. She told me to act interested in your stuff so you wouldn't notice what she was doing. I needed a place to stay, and she said she'd let me crash on her couch if I helped her distract you. I didn't want to be part of this. I feel sick about it. I said, why are you telling me now? Because she bragged about it. She said she was going to take that ring and sell it for cash, and then she was going to leave town. I don't want that on my conscience. I know I did wrong, but I'm trying to make it right. I thanked her and hung up. My hands were shaking as I walked to the dresser and opened the drawer. I pulled out the stack of sweaters, my fingers fumbling. The blue velvet box was still there. I opened it. The ring was gone. I stood there, ring into the empty box, and felt a cold wave of anger wash over me. She had taken it again. She had come back, probably when I was at the grocery store or picking up dry cleaning, and she had slipped into the bedroom and taken the one thing she knew I treasured most. I woke Mark. He sat up groggily, rubbing his eyes. What's wrong? The ring. It's gone. She took it again. He swung his legs out of bed and followed me to the dresser. He looked at the empty box, then at me. You sure you didn't move it? I never move it, I said. It's been in that box for 5 years. She took it while we were out. Mark pulled on his jeans and walked to the living room. The couch was empty, the blankets folded neatly, the duffel bag gone. Jessie had read out everything. She wasn't coming back. He called Frank. The line rang 6 times before Frank picked up, his voice thick with sleep. Mark, it's late. Jessie stole Linda's ring again, Mark said. She's probably on her way to you. Frank was silent for a moment. Then he said, she's not here. She said she was staying with a friend. Mark ended the call and looked at me. We need to find her. Where she could be anywhere. I thought about Chloe. She had called me from her phone, so I had her number stored. I dialed it, and she picked up on the second ring. Linda. Is Jessie with you? No, Chloe said. She left a few hours ago. She said she had something to do. She took a taxi, but she didn't say where. Did she have a bag with her, a backpack or a duffel, just a small purse? She said she didn't need much. I hung up and told Mark. He grabbed his keys. We're going to find her. Get in the car. We drove through the quiet streets, looking for any sign of her. The city was dark, the streetlights casting long shadows. We checked the bus station, the train station, the all-night diner she liked. Nothing. Mark pulled over and rested his head on the steering wheel. She could be gone by now. I read out the window, my mind racing. Then I remembered the note I had found in Chloe's duffel bag, the one with the address and the words, "Don't forget the key." I had shoved it back in the bag and forgotten about it. Drive to the address on that note. I said. Mark looked at me. What note? I explained it to him as we drove, the words tumbling out in a rush. He listened, his jaw tight, and followed my directions. The address was a rundown apartment building on the edge of town, the kind of place where people came and went without asking questions. We parked across the street and watched the entrance. A few minutes later, a taxi pulled up and Jessie got out. She was wearing a black coat I had never seen before, and she carried a small bag. She walked to the building, glanced around, and slipped inside. Mark, and I got out of the car and followed her. We found her in the lobby, talking to an older woman who looked like she ran the place. Jessie was holding out a piece of paper. She didn't notice us until Mark said her name. She spun around, her face pale. What are you doing here? Mark walked toward her. We came for the ring. Jessie's hand instinctively went to her pocket. Mark reached out and she stepped back. Don't touch me. Give me the ring, Jessie. She pulled it out of her pocket and held it up. You want it? Come and get it. Mark took a step forward, but she root toward the stairs. I moved faster, blocking her path. You're not going anywhere. Hand it over. She looked at me, her eyes wild. You don't understand. I need the money. I'm leaving this place. I'm rooting over. Rooting over by stealing? That's not how it works. Mark reached out again, and this time she let him take the ring. He held it up to the light, examining it. Then he slipped it into his pocket. We're done, Jessie. We're done chasing you. She stood there, trembling, her bravado crumbling. You don't know what it's like. You have a home, a husband, a life. I have nothing. I said, you have choices, Jessie. You just keep making the wrong ones. The older woman had been watching from her desk. She read her throat. She was trying to rent a room for the night. Cash only. Mark turned to Jessie. You need to go back to your father. Or find a shelter. Or get a job. But you can't keep doing this. Jessie wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. I'm sorry, she said, her voice a whisper. I'm sorry for everything. I didn't know if she meant it. I didn't know if she was capable of meaning anything. But I nodded, just once, and turned away. Mark followed me out of the building, and we drove home in silence. The ring was back in my pocket, against my thigh. But the feeling of safety I had once known was gone, replaced by a wariness I didn't think would ever leave. The ring sat on the kitchen counter for 2 days, a small gold circle that I couldn't bring myself to put back in the drawer. I kept looking at it, turning it over in my palm, feeling the weight of everything it had come to represent. Jessie was gone, but the mess she left behind was still there, scattered across our lives like crumbs on a clean floor. Mark and I moved through the apartment in a fog of exhaustion, speaking only when necessary, eating meals that tasted like Boe Road. Then Frank showed up. He knocked on the door Tuesday evening, a soft, hesitant rap that I almost didn't hear over the sound of the television. Mark answered it and stood there for a long moment, ring at his brother like he was seeing a ghost. Frank looked thinner than I remembered, his shirt wrinkled, his hair grayer at the temples. He carried a small duffel bag and wore an apologetic smile that didn't reach his eyes. Mark, he said. I figured I should come pick up her stuff. Mark stepped back and let him in. Frank walked past us into the living room, his gaze sweeping over the couch, the blankets, the small pile of belongings Jessie had left behind. He set his duffel down and turned to face us. I know I should have come sooner. I'm sorry. I leaned against the kitchen counter, my arms crossed. You knew she had a history of stealing, Frank. You knew she took money from you, jewelry from your wife. And you sent her here without telling us. Frank rubbed the back of his neck. I was desperate. I didn't know what else to do. She was getting worse, and I couldn't handle her on my own. I thought maybe a fresh start would help. A fresh start doesn't work if you don't tell the people taking her in what they're dealing with, I said. We trusted her. We let her into our home. And she stole from us. Frank nodded, his eyes downcast. I know she did. And I'm not here to make excuses for her. I'm here to clean up the mess I left behind. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a checkbook. I looked at the bills she sent here. The electric, the gas. I owe you for those. He wrote a check and handed it to Mark. Mark looked at the amount, then at Frank. This covers everything. The late fees, too. Frank shrugged. It's the least I can do. I'm not a deadbeat, Mark. I just got SCA read. I didn't know how to deal with her, so I pushed her onto you. That was wrong. Mark set the check on the table. What are you going to do about her now? Frank sighed and sat down on the arm of the couch. She called me from a payphone yesterday. She's staying at a shelter across town. She said she wants to come back home. I told her she could, but only if she gets help. Counseling, a job, something to keep her on track. She agreed. I said, do you believe her? Frank looked at me, his eyes tired and honest. I want to. I have to. She's my daughter. But I'm not going to let her run my life anymore. She either changes, or she finds her own way. Mark sat down across from his brother. We should have talked about this sooner, Frank. We should have been honest with each other. Frank nodded. I know. I should have told you everything. I should have come myself instead of sending her with a suitcase and a hope. The three of us sat in silence for a long moment. Then Frank stood and picked up Jessie's belongings, stuffing them into his duffel. I'm going to take these to her. She asked me to bring them. Mark walked him to the door. If she needs help, we can help. But she can't stay here again. Frank paused at the threshold. I understand. And Mark, thank you. For trying. Even if it didn't work out. Mark nodded and Frank left. The door clicked shut and Mark leaned against it, his head bowed. I walked over and stood beside him. Are you okay? He shook his head. I don't know. I feel like I failed her. Like I could have done more. I reached out and took his hand. You did everything you could. More than most people would have. She made her choices, Mark. You can't make them for her. He squeezed my hand and pulled me close. I know. I just wish it had turned out differently. We stood there for a while, not saying anything, just holding each other in the quiet of the apartment. The television had gone to static, and the kitchen light flickered slightly. The check lay on the table, a small piece of paper that represented the end of a long and exhausting chapter. Later that night, I finally put the ring back in its box and closed the drawer. I didn't lock it. I didn't hide it. I just left it there, where it belonged, and let myself believe that it would stay safe. Mark came to bed and wrapped his arm around me. We're going to be okay, he said. I closed my eyes. I know. But I didn't know for sure. Trust, once broken, takes a long time to rebuild. And we had a long way to go. A week passed in quiet. The electric bill was paid, the gas company stopped calling, and the landlord sent a new lease with only our names on it. Mark and I found a rhythm again, something steady and familiar that had been missing for months. He came home at 6, I had dinner ready, and we ate without any interruptions. The apartment felt larger, the silence a gift we had earned through weeks of noise. I rude sleeping through the night again. The creak of the floorboards no longer made me tense up, waiting for Jessie's footsteps. The bathroom door stayed closed when I wasn't using it. My mother's ring stayed in its box, and I wore it on Sundays, just like I used to. Small things, but they added up to something that felt like peace. On Friday, the doorbell rang. I was in the middle of folding towels, and I set them aside to answer it. A police officer stood in the hallway, a young woman with a calm face and a plastic bag in her hand. Behind her, the stairwell was empty. She held out the bag. Linda H.A. per. I nodded, my heart quickening. Yes, she said, we found this in a bus station locker. There's a note inside addressed to you. She handed me the bag and waited while I opened it. Inside was my grandmother's brooch, the one I had thought was still in my drawer. I had forgotten all about it, buried under the weight of everything else that had happened. It was gold and oval, with a small PRL in the center, and it gleamed under the hallway light. I looked at the officer. Where did you find it? It was left with some clothes and a note. The girl who rented the locker was named Jessie. She told the station clerk to send this to you. The clerk called us when she realized it might be stolen property. The officer paused. Do you want to press charges? I held the brooch in my palm, feeling its familiar weight. No, I said. She returned it. That's enough. The officer nodded and left. I closed the door and unfolded the note that had been tucked inside the bag. It was written on a piece of lined paper, the edges torn and uneven. Jessie's handwriting was smaller than I remembered, tighter, like she was trying to fit as much as she could into a limited space. I didn't sell it. I kept it safe because I knew you'd miss it. I'm not all bad. I just got lost. Tell Mark I'm sorry. I read it twice. The words blurred, and I blinked road. I didn't know what to feel. Relief, maybe, that she hadn't pawned it. But also a deep, aching sadness that she could write such a letter and still leave without saying goodbye to our faces. She had been so close, so many times, and yet so Mark came home that evening and found me sitting at the kitchen table, the brooch in one hand and the note in the other. He set down his briefcase and walked over. What happened? I handed him the note. He read it, his face unreadable, then set it down. She sent this. From a bus station. She left the brooch with the clerk and told her to send it to me. I looked up at him. She didn't sell it. She kept it. She could have walked away with it, but she didn't. Mark sat down across from me. That doesn't change what she did. I know. But it changes how I feel about her. A little. He reached across the table and took my hand. She's not coming back, he said. You know that, right? I nodded. I know. She made her choice. She chose to leave. We sat there for a while, not speaking, the brooch and the note between us like evidence of a trial we had both survived. Then Mark stood and walked to the closet. He pulled out the pull-out couch frame and the extra linens Jessie had used. We're donating these, he said. Tomorrow. I don't want them in the house anymore. We packed everything into boxes that night. The blankets, the pillows, the sheets that still smelled faintly of her perfume. We taped the boxes shut and stacked them by the door. The living room looked bare without the couch, but it also looked clean, like a space that had been scrubbed of all its bad memories. On Sunday, we drove to the thrift store and dropped off the boxes. Mark didn't say much, but I noticed the way his shoulders relaxed as we walked away. We bought new curtains at the store across the street, a soft beige that matched the walls, and we hung them that afternoon. We arranged the furniture, moving the A-room chair to the corner and the bookshelf to the opposite wall. The space no longer belonged to an uninvited guest. It belonged to us. A month later, Frank called. He sounded tired but hopeful. Jessie found a job, he said. She's working at a diner, saving up for a room of her own. She's paying her own bills now. Mark said, good for her, and hung up. He didn't ask for more details. Some doors were better left closed. I sat on the couch with a cup of tea, my mother's ring on my finger, my grandmother's brooch pinned to my blouse. Mark sat beside me, reading the newspaper, his hand resting on my knee. The only sound was the turning of pages and the soft hum of the refrigerator. Peace came not with a bang, but with a slow, steady breath. I took that breath, and I held it close. We didn't go on any grand vacations or buy a bigger house. We just stayed here, in our apartment, living our ordinary lives. And that was enough. The ring gleamed in the afternoon light, and I knew my mother would have been proud of me. Not for being kind, but for being honest. For drawing a line and holding it. For learning that family could be the most dangerous stranger of all, but that I could still choose my own. The drama faded. The dust settled. And I finally felt like I was home.